Hi, it's Jonathan. In this video, I will show you how to create and optimize foliage for a mobile game in Unreal Engine. Foliage is one of the most expensive assets to render on mobile. So it's really important to think about optimization at the very beginning. Let's jump into SpeedTree and I will show you my workflow for creating optimized foliage. So here we are into SpeedTree. As you can see, I have opened a high quality version of the Kusunoki tree. It is a tree that we can find inside the Meijingo. And since my project at the beginning was just a cinematic, I didn't pay attention that much to optimization. So you can see that the total tree is 772,000 triangle and I have only for the leaf 369,000 triangle. This is way too big for mobile. The biggest issue is overdraw. Since leaves are using transparency, overlapping them will create multiple transparency layers that the GPU has to process, which can be really expensive on mobile. So let's see how we can optimize this tree. So the first thing we're going to work on is the leaves. First, I'm going to add one generator that I don't really need. And what I want to do is to reduce the number of leaves that we are using. So I will simply reduce it to 1. So I have less leaf, but you can see that my foliage is losing its density. So what we can do after reducing the number is actually increasing their size. So here we are. Now I'm getting back some density, but the problem now is that the leaves are not really realistic because they are way too big. So we're gonna have to work on the mesh and the material. Now we are using this material, which has a single leaf. And if you go here, you can see the cutout has multiple triangle. So we're gonna change this material. We're gonna go to material and I'm gonna use this material, which is this one. And you can see that this material has multiple leaves inside only one texture. And the cutout is a single plane, so only two triangle. So you can see that again, now I am at 7,000 triangles. So I reduce a lot from 30,000 to 7,000 just by simply changing the mesh used. And you can see that I have small leaf, and you can see I can even go bigger. I can increase the size to 25 maybe, and it's still pretty realistic. Yeah. So of course, after you still have to optimize. For example, I can hide a lot of branch. I have to do a bit of setup, but I'm already at 35,000 triangle just by simply reducing the number of leaves, increasing their size, changing their material, and not using a single leaf but a pack of leaf. This optimization techniques works regardless of the software you are using to create your foliage. So now I'm going to show you just quickly the final version of the tree. So you can see it's like that. This is a tree that I'm using in the app. So you can see I have a total of 10,000 triangle and only 2,200 triangle for the leaves. These three are actually the main one on my environment because they are in the center of the shrine. So actually the resolution is a bit higher than my forest tree. So for the forest, I have even more optimized tree. So I have this one, which is, as you can see, 866 triangle for the leaves. I have this one, which is 422 triangle for the leaves. And I have this one, which is really for the background tree, which is only 250 triangle. And always same techniques. If I reduce number of leaves, I increase the size of the plane. So you can see for this tree, the plane are actually pretty big, and I'm using the same texture, but actually in the app, you just see them in distance, so it's really okay. So I really recommend you to think about where your tree is going to be in the scene. And if it's only a tree that you can see in the background, reduce the number of leaves, increase the size. And if you have trees which are more important, which are in the center of your scene, you can have more leaves, more triangle. It really depends of your game and your project. So when your tree is ready, you just have to export it. So in SpeedTree, it's just here. You put packing Unreal Engine. You have to export all LOD. We're gonna use that, and you just export. And now we can go back to Unreal. Okay, so now we are back into Unreal. So as you can see, I imported my tree, and SpeedTree automatically exported the material and texture, which is pretty nice. When you want to add your foliage into your scene, so I recommend you to not drag and drop your mesh directly in the scene. Instead, use the foliage mode of Unreal Engine. The foliage mode allows you to add foliage type and simply painting them directly in your scene. For example, if I take my tree, I can put single instance like that. You can also later select it and move it. And of course, you can erase too. You can use single mode, or for example, if I want to paint leaf, you can use paint and add your foliage like that in the scene. So why using the foliage mode? Foliage tool use instancing, which significantly reduce the draw call and improve performance, especially when rendering a large number of trees. Also, you have here some settings for your foliage. For mobile, I recommend you to put the mobility static for your tree and cast static shadow. For the dynamic shadow, it will depend of your project. If you want to use dynamic shadow, you can check it, and if you want to be fully static, you can uncheck it. Of course, for static shadow, you will need to rebuild your lighting, and also you can set a cull distance for your foliage here. So for example, if I put 5000, my tree will disappear at a 5000 unit. I already did a video about culling in Unreal Engine, so you can check it out and you will have more information about culling. After using the foliage tool, I'm going to show you another optimization technique, LOD. To do so, I'm going to open my tree. So in my tree, you can see here that you have LOD picker. What is LOD? LOD, or level of detail, automatically reduce the triangle count of your mesh based on the screen size, helping improve the performance. If you go here, you have LOD Auto. If you remember when we exported our tree from SpeedTree, I checked export LOD. So Unreal automatically import the LOD. And for example, if I go to LOD 0, this is my tree as it is with a 10,000 triangle. If I go to LOD 1, look, now I have triangle 4,400. We reduce by 6,000 the number of triangle used on my mesh. And you have here screen size. You see, it changed to 0.3. That means when my tree is only covering 30% of my screen size, Unreal will switch my tree to LOD 1. And if I go to LOD 2, now you see I have 1000 400 triangle, and screen size 0.25, so 25% of the screen size. And you can see it's really reducing the definition of my tree. So LOD is really important for foliage because when your tree is like that, so small, you're not going to see the difference. Look, it almost looks the same, but actually for the performance, it's going to be way better. 1400. Imagine 1400 compared to 10,000. So you have to set the screen size for each of your LOD. So there is no general rules about which number you have to put on the screen size. It really depends of your scene. If you have a tree which are really important in the center of the scene, you're gonna put LOD which are a bit less aggressive than if it tree which are actually in the background. I'm gonna show you if I really go far, you're gonna see the LOD transition on my tree. You see that? And you see, it's not like a big change, like really noticeable. And if you want to check that, you can go to level of detail coloration and mesh LOD coloration. And you see, you're gonna see up the switch of the LOD on my tree. See? So you have to try really. I recommend you to try, test it on your phone. You're gonna see if you have problem of performance. Maybe you can be more aggressive on the LOD. So the LOD level of detail number 2 can be instead of 20%, you can increase it to 30% of the screen size. So the LOD will appear faster. You have to try. It really depends of your project and your foliage. Okay, that's it for the LOD. So now we're gonna see the last point, the material. Okay, for the material, we're gonna open my master shader. This is the master shader that I'm using for all my foliage in this scene. So you're gonna see my master shader is really simple, and I highly recommend you to keep your master shader as simple as possible since it can have a really big impact on performance when you have a lot of foliage in your scene. First of all, my material blend mode is mask. Again, I recommend you to use mask instead of translucent. Masked material are much cheaper to render and are generally a preferred choice for foliage. For the shading model, I'm using two-sided foliage and my material is two-sided. After, as you can see, I'm using few texture. A color, which is going to the color, and I'm using the alpha for the opacity mask. I have a normal map. I also have a simple grass wind. You have to know that this has an impact on performance. Actually, in my app, I tried it. It was nice, bringing a little bit life to my scene. But the problem on the low-end device, it was having too much impact on performance. So I'm not actually using it for now in my app. And here I'm using a subsurface with a subsurface power going to the subsurface color. You can go with a subsurface. Really, the impact of performance is really okay. And the render that it's adding to the leaves is really nice. So I recommend you to use a subsurface color. So that's it. That's really a simple master shader. I really recommend you to not add too much. If you start to add like some noise, gradient, or whatever, it will impact your performance. So try to keep your material as simple as possible. And you can see that here, for my Kusunoki, I have here the color opacity, which is the texture of the leaves, and the alpha for the opacity. I have a normal, and subsurface, I'm using the same color and subsurface color. I just want to show you quickly about the subsurface. Look, if I remove it, you can see that my tree is really getting darker, especially in the shadow. And with the subsurface, it brings, see, a nice color on the leaves. So I really recommend you to use the subsurface color. So that's my workflow for creating foliage for mobile. By combining optimized tree, LODs, simple material, and foliage tool, you can achieve some really good looking environment while keeping good performance on mobile. I hope you enjoy this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you in the next one.